I'm Devorah Wallen, and I'd like to share my Tea for Two, my Torah thought, for 2 minutes, more or less. This week's Tea for Two is dedicated to a dear rabbi, mentor, and friend, Rabbi Aaron Leib Raskin, Rabbi of Congregation B'nai Avraham in Brooklyn Heights. He has a fabulous book called By Divine Design, the Kabbalah of Large, Small, and Missing Letters in the Parsha, which inspired this week's installment. We've spoken about how sometimes in the Torah, there are letters that are larger or smaller, some that are missing or cause strange grammatical phenomena. It is fascinating to note that there is a whole alphabet of large and small letters interspersed throughout the Tanakh, the Bible. Each letter has a hidden and meaningful explanation behind it. There is often more commentary on what's missing, invisible, or aberrant than what is typical or in plain sight. This week's Torah portion, Vayikra, is not only its name and first word, but the name of the new book of the Torah, which we have just begun to read. Vayikra, or the familiar Greek name Leviticus, continues the discussion of the laws of the Levites and Kohanim. The word Vayikra, and he called, has a small aleph at the end of the word. Although most translations might say, and God called to Moshe, etc., God's name is not explicitly written there. The commentators explain that the small letter aleph in the word refers to Moshe's humility. He realized that everything that he had, his gifts of prophecy, leadership, wisdom, honesty, and strength of character, were all from Hashem. His perspective was that if someone else had what he had, the other one would have excelled. In Bamidbar, or Numbers, the verse states, "And Moses was exceedingly humble, more humble than any person on the face of the earth." God chose Moshe for his humility and transparent ego. Rashi states on the word Vayikra, and he called. Whenever God calls upon someone, it is a term of affection and endearment, chiba. There happens to be a corresponding large letter aleph elsewhere in the Torah. The book of Chronicles, which is literally a registry of all of the generations beginning with Adam, starts with the large letter aleph. It is explained that although Adam was the pinnacle of creation, he did not humble himself to God's singular commandment not to eat from the tree, and thus fell from grace. The commentators say that Adam only needed to wait a few brief hours before the commandment would be revoked and no longer in effect. Adam did not have the patience or humility to listen and trust the commandment of his maker, Hashem. His name in the archives of man's history in the book of Chronicles begins with the large letter aleph, positioned in the first letter, arrogant, upfront, impatient. This is in contrast with the small letter aleph at the end of the word Vayikra, signifying Moshe's humility. Because of this, he was the only one worthy of seeing God face to face. His humility qualified him to receive and transmit the Torah without injecting his subjective self into it. This is why the commentators explain that Vayikra el Moshe does not even need God's name explicitly mentioned, because Moshe himself expressed godliness without concealing it. The Talmud in Sanhedrin explains the greatness of the human creation who was formed alone, yet from whom came billions of people. At the same time, the Torah says we were formed from the lowly earth, from dust. The contrasting themes are relevant today. Although a healthy self-esteem is important, it does not contradict the idea of humility. False humility might deny what a person has. But in the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, we can learn the lesson that although we may have gifts, we must always recall where they come from. And if someone else had our gifts, they might do better. We all have a little portion of the primordial human being, Adam, in each of us. This name is like the acronym that encompasses history. Aleph, Dalet, Mem spell Adam, but each letter is an initial for Adam, David, and Moshiach, the three pillars of creation. We are all the spiritual heirs of Adam as well as Moshe, David, and Moshiach. The Rebbe Reb Simcha Bunim of Peshischa used to say, we should have two pockets. One should have a note that says, I'm nothing but dust and ashes, and the other note saying, Bishvili nivra es ha'olam, for my sake the world was created. May we all be able to straddle the delicate balance of the confidence and self-esteem of Adam, while at the same time the humility of Moshe.